Well, it's lovely to see you. There's a lot of people who said they were going to come, so we'll see. It's nice to see some old new faces. You all look lovely.
Now it's at the hour.
Okay, good. Anyway,
Hey,
that's
Sam.
hi, Sam.
Hey, hey, good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning.
Exactly.
So the purpose here is really just to sort of check in and see how we're doing. There's no particular experiment. It's been quite a while, and several people have suggested to have a little get together and see where everybody's doing, particularly with the pandemic and stuff like that. So sure lots of things have changed. So just checking in and being together a little bit, see what will happen. Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying something a little bit. I'm doing fine. I like Simon. I think I moved not too long ago, a little out in the country, still around Toulouse, southwestern France. But it's actually perfect for isolation and pandemic times. Hardly have any neighbors. It's just fields as far as I can see out the window. It's very green. There are horses walking around and other animals. I kind of like it. I don't mind isolation all that much. I mean, I do miss certain social things, but with most of what I do, I'm okay by myself. I'm not all by myself. I'm here with my wife and some cats, and my kids come by once in a while. But overall, I haven't really suffered. I mean, I know that's not the case for everybody, so I'm not going to assume anything. But for me, it has worked out quite well. I'm just going to check on other people trying to get in here and stuff. Oh, seems fine.
One more.
So,
Who is that? Mathemagenic.
that's Lilia.
Lilia.
Anyway, I mean, we already started talking a little bit, so you guys say something. Hannah Lee, how are things in South Africa?
It's interesting for me. My life also haven't changed that much. I can't travel to Europe yet because I can't get a visa yet, but I miss dancing and physicality. So I do miss that part, but otherwise I'm really good. I can't complain. Beautiful things has been happening in 2020 and now in 2021, which I'm very grateful for. And it's really lovely to be here again and just to be with all of you and to feel you. And yeah, so it's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so hello everybody again. So there's no particular program here other than sharing where we're at and how we feel and how we're doing, and just sort of connect a little bit again. So hello Lilia, hello Tisha, hello Jules.
Hi.
Hi. Hello Ron.
Fleming.
Well, it's
Hi.
lovely to see all you guys again. I've missed you.
As we have also. Let me step in here then. I've actually been still working at the day gig. I found myself having quarantined myself about 4.5 years early here on Camino Island in the Pacific Northwest. My daughter and I keep saying with our 4 dogs, oh, that's a ghost of Tammy? Or is that Tammy?
Real deal.
Close enough.
Hey, anyway, we just keep shaking our heads at each other saying, we can't imagine a better place to have quarantined ourselves, than here. There's water, there's air, there's trees, it's all clean, it's all green. I only see about 4 or 5 cars a day pass by. It's really nice and remote. So we just like it out here. I just make my every week or every 2 weeks foray into Costco, and then I'm okay for another week or two. And so I'm pretty happy. Things are going well at work, and big things are afoot as of even just yesterday, big things going on. So anyway, really happy to see you all again. And Fleming, really glad to have connected with you either last week or the week before, whichever. Anyway, glad this is back. Over.
Thanks.
Oh, one more note for Lilia, whom I do not know, but it's really curious that you introduce yourself as Mathemagenic, because I have an undergraduate degree in mathematics, and my dad is actually a retired math professor. So I love looking at the world this way, and I find that I actually encounter very few people that do. So we'll see.
Oh, actually, Mathemagenic is not particularly related to mathematics. It's a term from somewhere deep in learning theory, so learning psychologies. And it's basically it came to in some research that they were looking at activities that trigger learning. So, and Mathemagenic that is from Greek, giving birth to learning. So like ages ago when I was starting blogging, I kind of picked up that name, and yeah, so this is how I go in a social network world.
So neat to see everybody.
Just enjoying the faces. It's a pleasure in itself. One more.
Val, you were at my first conversational experiment.
Oh, yes, I was, Tammy, right at the beginning. Late always. I never managed to make it on time, but oh, and Hanneli in person. This is gorgeous. Okay, Harry, my next door neighbor. Of course, Fleming, my favorite friend. The man who brought us all together. So I recognize a lot of the faces. Lovely to be here. Absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all here in person.
This is nice.
Is that your birds, Val, outside your window?
This is my kind of Zen moment. I have a playback of birds because I'm now living in the Netherlands in the city center, and having come from the open, as you know, countryside in France, it just gives me that moment of Zen. So I have the birds going in the background.
I'm actually also in the Netherlands, but in the east of the country with a bit more open spaces, and I also have birds singing outside.
It's beautiful. I mean, we have a park nearby where I can go and sit and listen to the birds as well. I mean, the Netherlands they have the most beautiful parks all over the show. They're really, yeah, Harry, that's true.
Yeah.
Honestly, there are things I miss a lot about France, and Fleming is like in the middle of it at the moment with the most amazing countryside like I used to have. But the Netherlands compensates with many other things, and I'm happy where I am. Very happy. So very at peace.
There is so little nature that, you know, they keep it beautiful. Or at least, you know, try to keep people away or, you know, on the path as much as possible. And it's actually nice in terms of wild nature. Myself, I'm Russian, and I so come from a country with a lot of wild places, and my husband is Dutch, and we also went to camp in Russia, and he was actually surprised that how little animal traces and animals themselves you see there in the forest, in particular around those areas where you camp, not like campsite, but wild camping. But it's also explained that, you know, in Russia, there is a different relationship. So people, you know, go and use the forest, pick up berries, hunt. Well, not always, but, and in the Netherlands, it's so regulated that you're not supposed to be in the most of the places at night between sunrise and sunset, and you're supposed to stay on the path. And so like these pockets in between are left for animals, and they are where they, you know, make their living. So you actually do see much more traces than, or at least in those semi-wild places in Russia where you can relatively easily get with a husband who's a foreigner.
This is a very interesting concept, with a husband who's a foreigner.
Well, in Russia, he's a foreigner. You know, we went camping, and he also, you know, he wanted to practice bushcraft, and we were staying with, you know, like kind of, it was like teenage camp or so, with a program, and we were like staying there nearby, and he really wanted to go in a forest for a night or two by himself and practice all the bushcraft things, because in the Netherlands, again, it's so regulated that you cannot. So, and at some points I was not very comfortable because it was area not like very wild, and it was by the lake, which was popular by locals in the weekends. And I was thinking, yeah, he's like, you know, the scientist with glasses who speaks very broken Russian. And, you know, if he meets like really countryside guys who are there and probably have, you know, drank something. And yeah, so that's why I say, you know, foreigner. Well, he's not foreigner, he's Dutch. So I'm actually a foreigner while we're here.
Well, aren't we all?
Yeah.
That's my discovery. I think we're all kind of foreigners in this place, and we're all just getting to know it.
I think it's also interesting, as a long time ago, when in my first years in the Netherlands, I was reading the book, what was called something, the English Understanding by Kate Fox, about the British culture. And there it was actually about immigrants. So, you know, like foreigners who come into the culture, that they have more conscious view on the culture, because you kind of, by the contrast, like an ethnographer, like anthropologist with your own, you see more things that locals probably are not conscious about, and that you can also consciously pick up certain habits, cultural values, things, and others not. So in that sense, I actually like being a foreigner, because in a sense it gives you, the position gives you more choice.
How long have
Sometimes
you,
an excuse to do things that are, not expected.
how long have you been in the Netherlands? How long have you been a foreigner for?
Yeah, that's close to 20 years.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That it's one reason for me to have changed countries a couple of times. I love the newness of being somewhere else, where you really have to pay attention and try to figure out how do things work here, how are the norms different, how are people different, how does the space work differently. And I think it works like that for everybody, but I particularly enjoy like seeking that out, or being in somewhat unusual circumstances in order to figure out what's the map here. How do I mean, you need to open your senses and be present, and it would be lovely to be present like that all the time, but it's often hard because we get into a routine and do the same thing every day. So I like sort of things that shake it up a little bit, like for myself by moving or by creating somewhat artificial circumstances. Like, it was part of the idea of the conversational experiments. Throw some kind of curveball every time, make the premise a little different, change the rules a little bit, and then try to find one's way. So I really like that sort of way of living, or I like perking up from doing that.
I've always identified as a lay cultural anthropologist, and having not been moving enough in the last 12 years, I really want to, again, I think that when you go to another culture and that you're noticing that all the time, that you can dub yourself a lay cultural anthropologist, because in a way that's what we all are if you're really paying attention, and it's actually fascinating, like just studying like the nuances, and especially if you come at it from an intuitive or spiritual or magical point of view, there's a whole there's so many things that are really interesting. And I always think of the Hopi prophecy of how we go to different corners of the earth and come back and find out different things and share them. And it's almost by traveling and coming back, like archetypically in cultures, you need the poets and the dreamers and the adventurers that would leave the people that would stay in the Shire, and they would go away and they discover these things and come back and tell everybody, because that is so interesting to learn about different ways. And also, I'm working with Jason Hines group, and people are always talking about like the myths in the land. And if you can uncover the myths in the land, that's also like a quest, like your relationship with those myths, and what are the secrets and what are the keys. And, it's like a divine comedy, tragedy, adventure.
I've recently been reading a book called Dream Yoga, which is in principle about how to have lucid dreams and wake up in your dreams. But it has an interesting approach, which is to create the habit of, as often as you can, to stop and notice, well, what's going on essentially. But it could be as simple as SOL. It's called their subject, object, location. Like I am here, I'm watching something happening. Object, what's going on? What am I doing here? What am I looking at? What am I perceiving? And location, where am I? And how did I get here? And it has a wider application, but the intention there is that you would create that habit. You could do it even while you're dreaming. You find yourself in an unusual place and you look at what am I doing? Who I'm here. Okay, it's me paying attention. What am I looking at? A wall with a rotating flower. That's weird. And so you notice sort of what's weird and what sticks out. And you notice, how did you get here? Which might make you catch that there's something fishy about the place you're at in a dream, but it also applies to every other situation. Like, how did you get here? Like, just thinking through that, I'm here, and what took me here? That could mean anything, like how you physically got there, or what steps did you go through, and sort of connecting it up like that is kind of a wonderful tool to wake up in wherever you're at, which is the same thing I refer to with being in a new place. You sort of wake up, what's going on here? It's really weird. And that makes you sort of be more present in a good way.
Something that I've been reading a book as well, and it was written by one of my neighbors. It's in Dutch, hoe kijkt men altijd gelijk, but basically meaning, how can you always be right? And I had a big problem. I mean, I want to read the book because it's my neighbor and I really want it, and his writing style is great and everything else. But I realized with that exact statement, how are you always right? I don't want to be right. And I realized for me, when we go through life trying to be right, that's when we remain foreigners. That's when it's that curiosity that says, show me a new way of thinking. What you're talking about, let me understand what's different to what I would normally think, say, or do. And that is what just keeps this world for me so exciting and so full of adventure. And what is wonderful about coming to a different country as well. But even in a dream, as you say, it's not like, it's always having that question in your head. What else could this mean?
I was also thinking in a previous iteration about, changing countries. I discovered, here, I really discovered different countries as I changed my own positions, as I changed roles, because I knew Netherlands as one country culture. I experienced it in one way while I was working as a researcher. And then at some point I had a burnout and I stopped and focused on raising 3 kids and homeschooling. And then you get in a totally different country, in a totally different experience. So that's, yeah, what you say, it's not always physical travel. And another thing, I also thought that I also had an experience at some point. I kind of became local enough in terms of, connection with, in particular with homeschoolers and speaking Dutch, and that people started to treat me as Dutch with all the expectations. And that was actually not very easy experience at the end. We kind of went through some rough time, but becoming a residence foreigner gives you access to some deeper level of things, because the learning that came out of there in terms of understanding really deeper things in a culture or beliefs or things that you don't see so easily, even if you just foreigner. That was interesting experience. So yeah, so you can travel in a different ways, changing roles, going deeper, and of course you can always change countries and places.
I was really wanting to move, and I was doing a lot of I Ching this weekend, and I got some really great answers for a bunch of places. And then I started studying, because every year I change my password to be like the Chinese, element a year. And so I always do some new combination. And the ox year is really not about moving. It's about really reaping everything you've done. And it's very much about hard work and building. And the next year is the tiger year. So I'm thinking maybe I'll get ready to like move the first day of the tiger year or something. But yeah, the year of the metal ox is a lot about like reaping everything we've been through and just really acknowledging like where we are experts already, which I think is really powerful medicine.
Thank you, Jules. I'm Metal Ox. And I started to make peace with the fact that I couldn't travel to Europe to relocate already last year. And now you're saying that it all makes sense with what's happened globally in terms of that. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I also felt for myself a strong harvesting sense already end of last year. So thank you for sharing that. It's very valuable for me personally.
Sam, I love your curiosity about rightness and truth. And is there a relationship? I want to start off by asking you, is there a truth? And is there a rightness?
There is a truth. There may not be rightness.
How would you define truth? Because truth is perhaps the story or the perception we have about it. And
Let
so
me go first by
yours.
saying what happens if there is no truth. If there is no truth, then we get false facts. We get alternative facts. We get alternative news. We get fascism. And only by respecting the truth and undermining false facts can we actually retain sanity. So yes, there is a truth. Truth is not absolute, but truth is the best we've got. Truth is what disappoints us the least.
So for me, truth is a perspective. As you say, there's no absolute in my understanding of truth. And I kind of always see it as this image of when we see a siren go past a police van or an ambulance, and what we hear when the siren is coming towards us and when the siren is going away from us are two totally different sounds. And when scientists actually measure it, we know that what we are receiving, so what the ambulance is emitting is one sound. But by the time it reaches us, due to the change in our perspective to it, we are receiving accurate facts, but they are two completely different sounds.
We are receiving accurate facts, but they're not two completely different sounds. They're different frames of reference. And if we don't understand that, then we delude ourselves.
For me, truth is usually a relief. Yeah, I mean, truth is a word, you can define it in many ways, but there's a way between people or for oneself to get to a point where, that's what's going on, okay, where you can relax. So that might be like an argument about different ways of seeing things, that if we really bring the truth out, we can see, but you're standing over there, so you see it a little differently, or your assumptions are a little different, or your circumstances, that's why it's a little different from you. Now I get it. Then everybody involved can sort of go, okay, all right. Then, and that's not a set of words particularly. It's more like having perceived it correctly enough. I mean, close enough. It's not absolute, but it's like everybody's involved. Okay. And from then you can sort of quietly go ahead and do what needs to be done, I think.
Yeah, I think this word truth often gets conflated and confused with the term experience, in my humble opinion. I really want to make a strong point about this because I've seen what happens when truth can be so easily pontificated and blasted and broadcast and take power with no substantiation. We must have respect for truth. Otherwise, we're part of the problem. in my opinion.
I feel very strongly because if there's when I was reading or listening to some of the broadcasts and the complete ignorance of fact, and I want to question: are we talking about facts or truth? And really, for me, and I have difficulty with the concept of truth, and where Fleming says, okay, truth is where we get to that point of, that makes sense. All right, we've received it. We're moving towards a point of truth. I think that I followed a series on conspiracy theorists versus scientists, and basically the idea is a conspiracy is people working together to hide information. Or to adapt information. And we all know there have been a lot of conspiracies that have taken place over the years in experience. But the difference is a scientist will look for facts. And if there are no corroborating facts, we will turn around and say, sorry, guys, we understand there could have been a conspiracy, but without additional facts or corroborating facts, it's not. However, when you actually change it to as a conspiracist, then the conspiracist will look at it and say, there are no supporting evidence, there is no facts to support it, therefore it's a conspiracy. The information has been removed. And when you're working with that mindset, there is no truth. There is just imagination.
But then again, if we can manage to include all these perspectives, I mean, there's this point where you realize, oh, you were looking at it that way, or those are your criteria. That was different from what I was doing. Now I get why you arrived at that conclusion. So even if we might disagree about what the truth of it is, or what the facts are even, I mean, there's a point where we can sort of get each other. I think that's what I'm looking for.
And to me, it's like there's layers. Like if you look at like I used to listen to a lot of people talk about plastic brain when my daughter was little, and they talk about how if there's like a wound in the emotional body that doesn't get fixed between like the age of like 15 and 25, that the brain gets less plastic, gets hardwired, and projects into the world like a very set idea, which is really what we call cognitive dissonance. So it's like if we're filtering truth through values that we think are important because of some hidden wound or whatever, then it's like people argue about truth. But I think that, you know, learning how to like have counsel and share different experiences of the ambulance. Oh, I saw it going this way, I saw it going this way. But if somebody is there, the very small percentage in the world that are sociopathic, that are there convincing the other people, oh no, you didn't see it that way, you saw it this way. And if they have like a value that it aligns with, then you have mob rule, you know. So it's really important to be able to have circumstances where people can unwind and share all of these perspectives. And you know, like I heard this one scientist talk about, like, are you going to be mad at the conner or the conned? I've looked at that a lot in what's been going on in the soul of America, and it's deep, you know. But I do agree that there is like you know, you can have shared experiences, you can have differing experiences, but there is like, it's like what they, you know, the elephant, you know, where they always talk about that parable in India. And I think that's really important, is like recognize there is a fucking elephant there. Like if you say that, no, you're not seeing an elephant, then there's a real problem. And then people can get their trauma, you know, activated. I've seen a lot of sensitive souls get so traumatized because it's so overwhelming when you're dealing with that level of conning. You know, that trickster energy is really intense right now in the field.
Daryl, hi.
I would like. Regarding all of these things that you guys are talking about with truth, I mean, obviously it's all valid, but I want to bring in something that I think has fascinated me, something I kind of see happening, and you guys do too. It's got to do with LARPing, live action role play. I think that a lot of people, I've read that when they make games, live action games, a lot of times the programmers or designers will notice that the crowd sees something that they didn't design into the game. And then they will quickly incorporate that into the game because they had inadvertently left clues for such a thing. And I think that what we're seeing here is a phenomenon, a crowd phenomenon, where they're seeing patterns, and with everybody looking for the patterns and then building upon the patterns that they think that they see, it's becoming an alternative reality. And I see it as converging with the reality we have traditionally known. And I wonder, you know, how far that can actually go into the future of just building an alternative reality that actually becomes the reality in some way. And I see this as part of what we're seeing unfolding. I'm not 100% sure that it's all orchestrated behind the scenes by some Bilderberger or, you know, world thing. That, I mean, clearly that's all in there. But I think that it's all mixed up with many things, including this phenomenon that is fascinating, scary, unbelievable, and yet I see it actually happening. So, I mean, I don't have a conclusion about that, but I think that it's a piece of this. I think we're seeing the future. Just saying.
I
It could
think,
be,
go ahead, Ron.
it could be an extension of what's already happening for thousands of, if not longer, of years, because we've really already got an alternate reality already. You know, one way to express it is that it's in our nervous systems, which have evolved over millions of years, and try to interpret what's under the underlying reality. It's already an alternate reality. We have this nervous system interface that we flow through the universe with, and doing our best to figure out what's going on. So I think that's just an extension of what's already going on.
I think part of the answer is to become more conversant with or more comfortable with alternative realities. So like part of what goes wrong with it is that yes, an alternative reality develops, and then we have to fight about which one is the real one. Whereas in some ways, there's just this joy of going along with a certain reality. Things develop their patterns and you do what's right within that reality. In many ways, that's cool, that's life. But the problem is if there's room for only one reality, then we have to go to war with each other about which one is the real one. We don't have a structure of society that could let some people move into an alternate reality without them starting to like sabotage the rest of reality. So I'm looking towards that it would be more okay to like create a bubble of reality with different rules and without necessarily bothering anybody else who has totally different views. So part of the practice of that for me would be to be more okay with developing alternate realities, moving in and out of them with more ease, and being okay with maybe seeing the totality of a constructed or organically developed reality and be okay with that. Oh, that's very interesting. Obviously, when you're in that reality, then the rules are like that, and that naturally is the way to do things. And it could provide a certain kind of empathy about realities, even if you don't agree with some of the outcomes of them.
So can I step in here? I think I think while you talked about the values, I think personally that we are in a meme clash of 3 different memes at the moment, and that comes out only now because the times have become so extreme. So we can look behind what the pre-modern, modern, and postmodern values are, and see how they went into the unhealthy part, into extreme parts. And for me, what we need to find, these are different realities. Everybody has a different reality on every stage of development. And if we want to make peace and find a common ground for each one, we have to heal these value memes, because when they get crazy, there's no way to unite. And when we talk about the present situation, I'm German, and I really was in the illusion that we had learned from 80 years ago, but we haven't. It's now, there is people, I read an article of a Russian person, and she says she never felt so little freedom in Germany right now. And in Russia, she felt much more free. And this for me is really shocking. But how can we get out of this situation where everybody gets crazy, So I don't know. I feel myself holding space for a different way of being, for everybody calming down and coming back to a sort of reason and listen to each other. I mean, this is only the high point of what has already been before, not listening, wanting to be right, and my truth is the right truth. And as it comes to extreme now, hopefully everybody understands that this is not the way, because this for me is destruction. So I really hold the space, and without doing much, really. I mean, I've written an article about this and these things, but it's not that I go out and fight, but I have confidence in the spirituality and the spiritual part of this, that we can in some way co-create an energy in which these things, after having reached a peak, can come to the better. There's no guarantee, but I do hope so.
Sam?
What?
I'd like an opportunity to possibly clarify, because I believe, and it's happened many times, that when I say what I just said about 5 or 10 minutes ago, it's often misconstrued. I actually welcome everyone's pursuit and everyone's line of thinking and everyone's perspective, so long as it's done with an open mind and we can actually have a civil, exploratory, mutually generous, mutually curious conversation about it. What I find is that way I can expand my perspective, hopefully others can expand theirs, and everyone, as long as they're looking for a good way to live, a good way to think, a good way to understand and make sense, then I think it's an honest and curious and very human endeavor. What I find the difference is when there is a wall, when you cannot ask why beyond a certain point, or you cannot actually ascertain the foundation of a certain claim beyond a certain point. That's where the conversation dies. And when the conversation dies, then I ask myself, where am I going to be disappointed? Am I going to be disappointed with this perspective or that perspective? And I usually go with the perspective that disappoints me the least. That's my learning model. And so I find it puzzling that I would go with a perspective that would actually disappoint me more often. Why choose that? So I am very curious. I am very generous. I am actually very engaging in this. But I, really do want to understand what it is that gives life that magic, and what perspective allows me to live that life more fully. That's the heuristic I'm using. And if, religion provides that in anyone else, I'm very curious about that. If if spirituality in a different form does that, I'm very curious about that. I am not an expert across, most of these things, but I'm very curious. And I actually get disappointed when the whys encounter a wall and it stops. Over.
Cheryl?
I really would like to jump in because I'm like sitting for last few minutes on a metaphor that when we started to talk about alternative realities and, how people start to see patterns and then they got included in a game, I actually thought of my own practice of permaculture, that I notice certain patterns, and these patterns that I find useful. For example, at some year I found that in my vermicomposter, the pumpkin seeds got sprouted and I got free pumpkin seedlings. So in following years, I just started to, do that on purpose and share with people. And so I was really thinking that, in a sense, with permaculture is, like mini ecological ecosystem that of my garden, I do create a alternative reality with reinforcing certain patterns that, I find interesting or useful. And what I was also thinking about walls, that, yeah, there are walls and we have, neighbors behind, but, like the seeds of plants, they are, it's like seeds of ideas. It's probably we people, we cannot cross the walls, but the seeds of plants, they can. So, and, if I have certain plants, I have wild strawberries, they spread to the neighbors. Of course, it's the same if neighbors decide to use Roundup, it's kind of my plants get dead. So, and I was also thinking about guerrilla gardening as a way of, letting seeds grow in some places where they are not intended, the seeds of, yeah, things that you find interesting. And yeah, I don't know how far it's a picture of, the human who changes the world in, the way they like it. But I see also with whatever things I do is still such a small scale in relation to nature and bigger ecosystems or bigger social ecosystems or, processes that we have. So for me, it's a kind of metaphor of how different local mini ecosystems become part of bigger ecosystems. And, in a sense, they do coexist and do influence each other. So maybe, we as humans can, also find a way to do that.
Cheryl?
I'd like to, Cheryl, I'd like to go after Cheryl.
Okay.
I just wanted to say something short. Touching upon what Heidi said about integral, kind of makes me think, are we ready for this yet as a species? Like, are there enough people? Is there a predominant amount of people who really want to dive into the possibilities, the good possibilities, as opposed to the bad possibilities, that we can trust ourselves with these kinds of experiments? I just got through reading, I'm actually on my third reading of the book Stealing Fire. And if any of you want to be inspired about what can be accomplished, what humans are capable, check that book out. It's really something. So I won't get into it and take up time. Go ahead, Letitia.
Thank you. I think the thing that pops out in the listening up until now is a dynamic that happens between individual ego, a sense of someone's autonomy and I'm going to, and then what is foundational to what is the most basic fundamental in his sharing was this element of harming none in the process, which means there's a level of consciousness. It means that when somebody's exercising their intellectual abilities, that they're in their orientation. And I'll just go right to this point, which is we live at a time where there's a deficit of elders, meaning people, those of us who are aging into areas. The question is, how do you be a good elder? Many of the ways in which we think are orientations referencing age and cycles of life. So as you age closer to the end of your life, there's a different orientation and a spaciousness that happens. But the truth that's fundamental for life in general is always the same. And that truth, which is a universal truth, would be the same for people who are Stone Age people as it would be for people who are thousands and thousands of years from now, because that truth is an individual. So the challenge that I often see is that people are very immature in a central orientation of a relationship to the universe and the expanse of time. It's not a fault, there's not a wrongness, there's no right way. We each enter into that stream of life, however it is that we come to. But at the end of the day, here we are, sort of edging towards the end of a pandemic where in the United States, we've had 500,000 people die. That's not a small piece of change for humanity. But the effect of a individual or a small group of individuals ended people because of their lack of including everyone in their thinking of the truth. And rightness, always, in my humble opinion, when somebody wants to be right or seeking the right thing, it's about the ego needing validation. That I know what I'm doing. So the I part, which is separate from an interrelated being, the relationship always for me is primary, because in a garden, the relationships rise and fall. The health of the soil creates different opportunities for life to actually come together. There's many examples of people planting trees, and then the animals and the plants come back, and the animals help plant more seeds. So anyways, that's my thought about it. And when it comes to time, I think human lived period, 80 years, as opposed to galactic time where they're, planets are billions of years, or stars, that we have a very short time span. And that somehow our sense of immediate gratification, I want to see the effect of my effort now, rather than in an indigenous way, I want to see the effect of my effort as it will unfold for the betterment of the future and all things on this planet. Again, it's about relationship. So you show up in the world doing the right thing because it's the right thing that contributes not only to your own life, your health, and the ease of everything around you, but it contributes to the betterment of the future. Not about being right, not about finding the truth. Because if you're looking to find the truth, then in some way you're looking to be right. The question is, are you looking to be right, or are you looking just to be? You know, you came here as a soul to be something, to contribute something. So where is your thinking and your orientation as a solution to social change? Okay.
Same.
I think we all have ego. I think it's a fallacy to think that we don't have ego. The question is it in check? So to actually claim one does not have ego is actually quite an expression of ego in my world.
I think that if an ego is identifying as an ego, unrelated to other things, that's the problem. There is no such thing as a separate unit unless you're a hydrogen molecule, a hydrogen atom.
And in that
Because
phrase,
hydrogen, right.
I think of ego as a tool. It's the interface. And so it's just an interface. It's like it's where the rubber meets the road. So it's really like the tires on my car.
And Sam, you notice I don't, we've been on these conversations, so I don't use the word ego referencing our humanity. That's not a frame of reference that I use, because the extended expression of energy for me is soul, you know, or energy. And the ego to me is the structure that happens in this time span of this physical meat suit.
I love the Voltaire quote, and I think that what you say there, Letitia, is our desire to set aside the ego and to say, all right, what we want to do is work towards, I call it the greater good, or to our contribution to society. The thing is, I still feel that that is not a universal truth. For me, that is still only our perception. And I can go that from a very, very long experience of a 28-year marriage where I believed in what I was doing and I was putting everything into it for the children, for this, for that. With hindsight, I can tell you that what I was doing was a trap of my own ego, even though I believed I was beyond my ego. I was doing it for the others. I was doing it for the children. I was doing it for my ex. I was doing it for, but our perception of it, and for me, why I love Voltaire's quote is, I think we always have to go back and keep asking ourselves that question. Yes, this is what I believe is right, but is it right? And how can I measure it? And what other questions could I ask to understand if the results I think I'm creating, and who am I to decide what the results should be? I don't know really, because when I am deciding how I'm going to put forward the future for the greater community, it's my decision. So it's my future and my vision of the future. It's not what yours might be.
I want to clarify, if you're putting aside your ego is a part of you. Sam points out, you know, he thinks that that's part of everyone. I'm saying, and what Fleming often says, and he implies, is to be inclusive. So if you're setting aside your ego, you're repressing a part of yourself, and that's not healthy. So the idea is, what is the healthy way of being as a wholeness? The wholeness of being. And if you're sacrificing at the expense of yourself, any part of yourself, then that also isn't healthy. So here, to me, that's a level of maturity, understanding, development in all the ages of appropriateness. So when I think of age appropriateness, I'm thinking of Stone Age beings as opposed to computer age beings. And I don't have the same expectation of a Stone Age being as I do of a computer age being. But it means what's right. If you're asking the question, what's right, it's what is appropriate. You know, it's contextualized about what is appropriate with the context that you're in. And how you're relating, because then you're relating to every element in your sphere of beingness, which might be your home, your city, your locality, you know, whatever it is. But if any one of those things is left out of your deep values, you become out of balance. And your choice, whatever you're choosing for your future, is not including the best for all of that level of social engagement. And it will be unsatisfactory. So to live from the place of your deepest values with nothing being left behind and allowing it to be appropriate to, you know, the more that you learn, the more challenging it is because there's lots more opportunity and potential, which would say to me that it might take you more time to make a decision because you want to look at all your options only for a period of time. Because once you understand how your instrument gets honed, meaning your intuition and your comfort in your own body, you're not having to move into a place of only cognitive, logical thinking. There's an expanded awareness where every level of sense and every development of dimensionality is included in your choice making.
I just want to say that we've passed the top of the hour, so I just want to be sure if anybody who hasn't said much feels like saying something, you're very welcome. Nobody has to say anything here. Just want to be sure we hear from everybody who wants to add something.
I haven't been in these conversations for, I think, maybe over a year. I could explain that like everybody's explaining, but I don't feel like that. I just want to share, I'm very happy to see you all. That's the main thing. And the conversation is an extra. I'll probably leave it at that. And you want to reach me, you know where to reach me. I'm happy to have a conversation with every one of you. But I'll leave it at this now. Thank you.
There's one thing I want to just share before we hung up. I had the most amazing experience going from one Zoom to another last weekend. And Fleming and I used to have this company, and Letitia was in it, Synchronicity Networks. And I have said often lately that my main religion is synchronicity. Like, I really think it's my main thing. Like, really have magic and all kinds of stuff. But I've just been reawakening in a new way lately. And I see myself as a microcosm of the galaxies and the ancient future. So I think all of us are moments and pinpoints of God. And I was just super aware in this meeting that I've been having with Jason Hines' group, and there was this expert that was invited that was talking to us about this eco village vision we have. and she was talking about this for her master's. She was interviewing this man from Colombia that helped restore these bioregions, and that these tribes lost their language. And he was talking about this decade process. And this was in her dissertation. And I was just so awake when she told the story. And then I went into another Zoom an hour and a half later with a group of people. I'm working on diversity in a very grassroots way in Los Angeles, having to do with the ballet scene and just people whose hearts are in the right place. And they're just really we've all been through a process, because the white ballet world, has been affected by the whole George Floyd. And I was just so present in the other Zoom that I was able to take the conversation into the next Zoom. And I was able to share the story that just happened to the next group. So there was totally different group. It was like a worldwide group. And then I was with this grassroots group, and I was able to share the exact story, because we were waiting for the Zoom to start. You know how that is at the very beginning when everybody's waiting for people. And it was so compelling because I was so lucid. And then everybody was just speechless and everyone stopped talking. And I realized that I was remembering, which is one of the main themes of my life. I was finding my mind. I had the ability to share a universal truth about how this tribe was able to get their language back and everything. And that I shared it with a completely different pocket of people, and it affected everybody. And they were so interested in the story. And I said, oh, I'll go get, the name. But it was just, it was just such a lovely moment, just really being aware and just being able to remember, which is that to me, it's like when you have the presence of mind, and then it's what Lila was saying about the seeds. I was bringing a seed of a story to other people that believe in this kind of reclamation. And it was just amazing. And I really feel blessed to be in this circle today, because I've been through so much in the last few years. I've been really internal, and I haven't been able to be in community as much. And I really am grateful to be included in Fleming's conversational experiments. And forgive me if I talked more than I should have, but I'm happy to be here.
Lovely. Anybody else who would like to give some final words or input or say whatever you want?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm really grateful for being here, and the conversation was wonderful. But in particular, I really want to thank you, Letitia, because what you said was really nourishing for me and really validating for me. And I won't go into it anymore, but thank you really from the bottom of my heart. And thank you, Fleming, for bringing us all together, because I miss this.
Yeah, it's really been wonderful to be here and see everyone. It is deeply nourishing to have this kind of connect. And I didn't want to really put anything in, because almost anything that I would say would split the wholeness of what listening is to all of you and what was shared. And I know there's more to know and more to learn, but it was a good practice to just listen and be with what's being shared. So thanks, everyone.
I'm going to leave you by just saying life is like a box of chocolates. And for those who have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about.
So thank you, all of you, for the chocolates. Lovely to share with you. see you again some other time, somewhere.
Absolutely.
Bye,
you.
everyone. It was
Bye-bye.
great to see you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Lovely.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.